Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Leanne Hornby. I will be your host and presenter for our Maximo webcast today on the topic of using asset templates in Maximo. Firstly, I'd like to thank everybody for taking time out of your schedules to attend our webcast. I hope that you find the content both informative and valuable to your organization. For those of you who might be new to our On Tracks webcast series, we typically offer one educational webcast each month on a topic of interest that's typically suggested by our clients. The purpose is to simply provide a little bit of insight into the capabilities of Maximo. Sometimes this is a specific function, and sometimes it's a more broader topic. But if you do have any suggestions for any future webcasts, please feel free to email them to me directly, and I'll just provide my contact information at the end of the presentation. Okay, so we'll get started here. So again, my name is Leanne Hornby. My contact information is listed here. So for any questions or any suggestions for future webcasts, you can forward them to myself here at the email or contact me by phone below. Otherwise, we'll jump right in. We'll get started talking about asset templates. Okay, so the agenda for today's session, we'll talk a little bit about what asset templates actually are and how you can use them within Maximo. We'll talk a little bit about associating spare parts, meters, and specifications to those templates. And then we'll look at creating multiple asset records and updating current existing asset records. And then from there, I will perform a demo for you, and then we'll open the phone lines up for any questions that you might have. So what are asset templates? The asset template application allows you to specify common asset information in one place and then apply that common data to multiple asset records. Typically, the type of common data that you can specify on an asset template includes things such as the asset description, the type of asset, manufacturer or vendor information, the purchase price, replacement cost of that asset, an asset priority level, any spare parts, preventative maintenance details, meters, and then classifications or attributes. When you apply preventative maintenance details to an asset template and apply that to either a new asset record or an existing asset record, that PM record would then be created for each asset. And that preventative maintenance detail is being driven by the master PM application. Any asset records that are created or based on an asset template will then inherit all of the common asset details associated on that template. And by using the asset templates, this just allows you to streamline your data entry. It assists with creating new asset records, especially when you're creating multiple of the same type of asset, as well as improving the updating of the core details of any of your existing asset records. How are asset templates used? So they can be used in two different ways. You're creating a new asset template, and from there you can either create multiple new asset records, or you can update multiple existing asset records. Associating spare parts. When you're creating an asset template, you can associate information from other applications or objects, such as spare parts, preventative maintenance, meters, and specifications. Within the spare parts tab of the asset template, you're able to identify any of the non-rotating items that are associated with the asset records. From there, you're building that association through the item master application. And once that item has been identified, you're then able to update the quantity of that item that is required as a spare part for that particular asset. For associating preventative maintenance details, from the PM tab on the asset template, you will see that we can identify a master PM record to that asset template that will then be applied to any new or existing asset records. The master PM record must be created prior to associating the asset template, and that master PM can either be time-based or meter-based. You're able to specify any specific days of the week that that PM would be generated. You're able to restrict it for seasonal work, and you can identify individual job plans that might be associated to that specific asset. And just as you would create a PM record, you are still able to apply a sequential list of job plans. And from there, once that master PM record has been set to active, we can then apply that to the asset template. For associating meters, from that meter tab on the asset template, this is where we're able to identify the meter definitions and any attributes associated to that meter and apply that to an asset record. This allows us just to track that performance of the asset, not actually a physical meter. And here we're able to identify multiple meters for an asset template. Once that meter has been associated to the record, we can then record meter readings at the individual asset record level or on a work order associated to that individual asset. For associating specifications, we're able to identify, organize, and categorize the assets. These specifications will typically align with specific vendor or industry standards. From the Specifications tab, we start by classifying that asset and then associate the attributes that apply to that asset. Once we've classified and associated those attributes, we then enable the end users to search for a specific asset record by their attributes through that advanced search function. For creating multiple asset records, as mentioned earlier, once we're creating that asset template, we begin by identifying the common details that will be shared across all asset records for that specific template. When a template is first created, it begins in the status of draft. And like other records in Maximo, such as a PM record, that status must be set to active before we can actually create a new asset record from the template or apply it to existing asset records. When we're ready to create a new asset record, we have to identify the site in which the asset records will reside in, and that asset location along the hierarchy within that site, as well as the quantity of new assets that we're going to create from that template. So an asset template is associated to a specific location, but it can be associated to multiple sites within that organization. Once we have specified the site, the location, and the quantity, at that time we're then able to specify the serial number for each individual asset that will be created. For updating multiple asset records, whether we're generating a new record or applying an existing record, we're still going to begin by creating that asset template with the common details. The status will be the same starting in draft, and once it's set to active, we're then able to associate it to the existing asset records. At this time, we still identify the site and the asset location within the hierarchy to then pull up the asset records that template will be applied to. Just as I mentioned when creating new assets from that template, when we're applying the asset template to existing records, we must actually select the assets that are associated to that specific site. Once an asset template has been used to generate new asset records or has been applied to existing asset records, we're also able to view the asset template usage from the template to see what asset records have been associated to that particular template. So the example I have to show you today would be a scenario here where a maintenance group has purchased some valves from the same manufacturer for a valve replacement project. Besides the manufacturer, each of the valves are going to share the following common details: the description of that valve, the purchase price, the spare parts that are associated to that valve, the components and the material type to that valve. They're all going to require a quarterly inspection, and the maintenance group would like to take a pressure reading each time that quarterly inspection has been completed. So in this scenario, what we will do is we'll create a new asset template record for those valves, apply the common details, and then from there we'll generate some new asset records. So I'm going to log into Maximo. I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so from the Go-To menu, the Asset Template application is part of the Assets module. So it's listed right under the Assets application. And it's going to redirect me here to the List tab. And from here, we'll go ahead and create that new template for the valve. So from the Asset Template main tab, you'll see here that we can provide a unique identifier for the template. So for this demonstration, I'm just going to call this a valve template. And I'm going to give this a description here. Okay. In the details section, I have some more fields to fill out, the first being the asset description. The asset description field is what will populate on the actual individual asset record. So in this example, I'm going to use that as my description. I can then classify the type of asset. So from my data here, I'm going to use this as a production asset. And then I'm going to identify my manufacturer. Okay. On the right-hand side of the details section, you'll see there's a few fields here where we can record things such as the purchase price, replacement cost, a budgeted price, as well as an asset priority. So I'm going to record that these were $75 each. I can put in a priority level at this point if I need to. I can also update this information on the individual asset records. So now I'm going to go ahead and save the beginning piece of my template. And now I'm going to move to the Spare Parts tab, and I'm going to start to apply some spare parts to my template here. I can do so from the Select Spare Parts. And I can also do so from the new row and go to the item master or inventory to find that record. So I'm going to return with value, and I can update my quantity here on the line level. And so once I have those parts associated, I'm going to save my record. And then I can move over to the PM tab. So in this scenario, we require a quarterly inspection so that the maintenance group can take a pressure reading as well. So we're going to apply both a PM and a meter to this. So from the PM section, I'm going to choose the new row icon. And you'll notice here that it's the master PM template that it's looking for. So I'm going to go to my master PM application. And I have a PM here that I've created for my valve. It's going to be flagged as the PM work type. It's going to start in a waiting scheduled status with a work priority level 3. On the frequency tab, I was able to specify that this is going to be a quarterly, so it's going to be generated every 3 months. There are no restrictions on the seasonal dates. And then on the job plan sequencing tab, I have identified a job plan that's associated with this quarterly valve inspection. So from here, I can also go to the job plans and actually look at the details for that particular inspection. There we are. So here's my job plan that I've identified. I've got some tasks that are associated I could apply some labor, materials, or services, but I'll now bring this record over or return back to my preventative maintenance master PM and bring this record back over to my asset template. Okay. Now I'm going to save this record. And now I'm going to apply a meter from the meter tab so that we can take this pressure reading. I'm going to select from a list here. I've got a pressure reading here. You'll see here that it pulls over the meter type as well as the unit of measure. And I'm then going to save that record. And last but not least is the specifications tab. So again, this is where I can classify this asset template and apply specific attributes that will then be pushed over to the individual asset records this template is associated with. So I'm going to start to classify this. I'm going to scroll here and I'm going to look for valves. This is the record here that I'm working on is a two-way valve. So I'm going to choose the two-way valve as my classification. And you'll see here that it brings over 6 different attributes. I've got the stem material, the size, the seat material, design pressure, plug material, and body material. So from each of these, I can then apply to the individual record. So I will now save that record here. So now that I have built the bulk of my asset template, I would like to now start to create those valve records. So in order to do that, the first thing I need to do is I need to make sure that my template is not in the status of draft and it's in an active status. So we do that through the status change icon. And I will set that to active. I get confirmation that my record has been saved. And now I'm able to create new asset records from this template. So to do that, from the Select Action menu, you'll see here we've got a few different options. We've got our Generate New Assets. We've got an Apply to Existing Assets. We can duplicate the template. And then at the bottom here is our View Asset Template usage that I briefly mentioned. So let's start here by generating a new asset record. And the first thing it does is prompt me to identify the site that these assets will reside in. So I'm just going to choose to work out of Bedford. And when I select OK, you'll see it provides me with a Generate New Assets dialog box. So this is, again, for the site Bedford. In the default asset table data information, this is where I need to identify the location within the hierarchy that these assets will reside. I can apply a status to the individual templates. The default value is not ready, but you'll see behind the value list here I can set it to active, limited use, or operating at this time. I can provide a partial serial number, so if they're in the case where you might purchase the 5 assets and the beginning seed of that serial number is all the same, you can enter that in here and it will populate that in the asset list and you can update the suffix of that serial number on the individual records. The PM start date here, it's generated with today's date. So what that's saying is at this point you can identify when that next PM should be generated and associate a specific storeroom where you might go to get parts for that PM record. And then the installation date is the date that you're creating these records. So you can update this accordingly based on when the assets will actually be installed. In the Generate Asset Number section, the quantity field is required. So how many assets are you looking to create? If you number your assets yourself, you're able to provide a starting number and add a prefix or a suffix to that number. And then our options here are to generate that asset or clear the fields. Once we select the Generate Assets, in the Assets section below, it will list the assets that will be created from the template. It'll identify the asset number, either auto-numbered, or if you do your own smart numbering system, the location in which they reside on the hierarchy, their status, their serial number, and their installation date. So you do have the ability at this time to update those individual fields for each of the assets. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. I'm going to find the location that these assets will reside at. So I'm going to open my drill down. And I'm going to apply them in the boiler room. Okay. And I'm going to return with value to bring that location back to my default asset table data. I'm going to leave the status as not ready, and I can then change the status for each of those individual valve records when the time is right. So for the purpose of the demo, instead of creating 30 records, I'm just going to go ahead and create 5 so you get an idea of what this is like. I'm not going to provide a starting asset number. I'm going to utilize Maximo's auto-numbering function. And I'm going to go ahead and generate those 5 assets. So now you'll see in the asset section, I have 5 new entries, taking the next auto number in line associated to the boiler room location that I selected and flagged with the not ready status. Here I can go ahead and provide a serial number for each of the new assets that we've created. And so now that I have those fields filled out, once I'm ready, I can go ahead and select OK, and this will actually generate and build the asset records for us in the asset application. So I get a confirmation letting me know that my template has been applied. So from here on the Select Action drop-down menu, if I go to the View Asset Template Usage, this will show me where this template has been applied. So it references the 5 asset records that I just created. So now I can go and take a look at those assets. I'll select the first one that I created, and you'll see here the fields that came over. So I've got my not ready status, my asset type came over, and just below that is the asset template field here that's referencing the valve template that we just created. On the location side, it's identified the location that I selected from the template, and it's provided the serial number here on the right-hand side. If I scroll down here into the purchase information, it recorded the manufacturer that these valves came from, the installation date, the purchase price. On my spare parts tab, you'll see here it's referencing the spare parts that we associated, the connector and the washer. From the meter tab, we now have that pressure meter that's been identified. So we can now take that PSI reading each time the quarterly inspection is due. And on the specifications tab, you'll see that the attributes have also come over. Okay. From the work tab, once that PM has generated a work order, that work order will then be referenced here in the work order subsection. If I choose the View Work Details, this here will show you on the Preventative Maintenance tab that there has been a PM that's been created for this particular asset record. So PM 1020, that references my job plan 1001. It's in the status of draft. So from here, I could go over to that PM application, and I can make sure all my details line up, and I can set that PM record to an active status. Once it's in that active status, then it will be able to generate that quarterly inspection work order for me. So right from here, I can update that status to active and select OK. So now I will be able to generate a work order when the time comes. Okay, so now I'm back at my asset record. So now that we've actually created this asset template record, we're also able to use it again in the future. So now what I would like to do is I'm going to go back to the asset template application. I'm going to pull up that asset template that I created for the valve, and I'm going to apply that to some existing records that are already listed in the asset application. So here I have my valve template, and from the Select Action menu, I'm going to choose the Apply to Existing Assets option. And you'll see again it's going to prompt me for the site. So from here I'm just going to continue to work out of the Bedford site. And you'll see here I've got slightly different dialog box here, but in the default asset table data, it's looking for similar information. What location, what status would we like to apply? Is there a serial number? So I'm going to go and pull up my location here. So from the locations application, I'm going to use the drill down, and I'm going to go to that boiler room and bring that value back to my template. In the asset subsection, you'll notice here that the Generate Asset icon is slightly different. Now this one just says Select Assets, and this is going to allow us to pull from a list of assets and apply that template here. So I'm going to search for my assets. So I've got 3 two-way control valves that I would like to apply this template to. So I'm just going to select the little checkbox here to the left of them and hit OK to bring them over to the record. So it's going to apply that location. I can now change or update the status. So let's say for each of these, we'll note that they are currently active. And maybe we'll leave this last one here as not ready. So the serial number is referenced here. This basically just allows you to update the serial number. If the serial number is already recorded on that asset record, by entering a new value here, this will just replace what's been recorded. Otherwise, if you leave this field blank, it will just continue to accept what's been recorded on the asset record initially. The same goes with the installation date. It will accept the value that is currently on the asset record. So once I've identified my assets that I'd like to apply this template to, my last step here is to select OK. And the system will then apply those templates to the record. I get that confirmation that the template's been applied. And now I'm going to navigate back over to the asset application. And we'll look up that set of assets here. Okay. So I've got the first one here. You'll now see that this is referencing my asset template. If I scroll down here, It brought over my manufacturer details. On the spare parts, it's brought over the connector and the washer. On the meter tab, it's also referencing the pressure meter. On the specifications, it's also referencing those attributes. And from the work tab, if I view the work details on the preventative maintenance tab, you'll see here that it's also created a PM record for me that is in the status of draft. And my next steps would be to go and activate that PM record. And from there, it'll start to generate the preventative maintenance work order. Okay, well, I think this will conclude today's webcast. So again, I just want to thank you all for attending. I hope that you found the webcast of interest and of some value to your organ. If you'd like a copy of the PowerPoint, please feel free to send an email to myself. My contact information is here on the screen. So again, thank you for your time and interest, and we look forward to meeting with you again online at the next webcast in the series. Thank you.